You're listening to Right to Question
with Tara Lynn
and the Prophet.
Hey, man.
Hey, how are you, Tara Lynn?
I'm good. How are things going on for you on that side of the table?
Well, you know what? It's very interesting. It's different. If everybody sees me, like, I'm always like, my face is like over here and I'm over here. It's because I'm like, there's like doing the soundboard stuff.
I'm just sitting here.
Yeah.
I don't have to do any of that.
Yeah. So I'm just over here.
That's
like,
why I just sit here and smile.
So I'm like looking down. It's like, okay, did I hit record? Because what you don't see on the other end, the viewer, is that many times we have recorded. Okay, one time we recorded a whole podcast. I didn't have the volume on.
Wonk, wonk, wonk.
So we heard each other, but you wouldn't have heard us. So
the dancing looked really stupid too.
Yeah,
I always have a tendency, because you couldn't hear
no music.
You couldn't hear the music.
No music, no voices.
Oopsie.
But anyway,
Yeah.
Hey, so we've got a wonderful podcast ready for you guys.
Yes, we do.
Right to question.
Right to question. Okay, so we have a lot. There's a lot going on.
Just
right?
a little bit, yeah.
A lot going on. And one of the things Prof and I have been talking about is what in the world is going on?
What is going on? Yeah.
And what can we do about it?
What can we do about it?
Right.
Right.
These are the questions. And I think that's pretty big for all of us. Most of us are sitting around thinking, what in the world is going on?
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are just like, oh, I mean, I've heard so many people that are just like giving up almost. They're like, I don't want to even think about it. There's too much going on. So
Yeah, too much.
but we just need some clarity to it, and look through what's going on, some of the things, and then again, ask the most important question: is what can be done about it? And I think what we've come up with and talked about is there's some positive, a lot of positive, and
Believe it or not.
and there's a lot that we can do, and so we're
Believe
going to
it.
get into that.
Or not.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think
I don't know why my hair looks like Conan O'Brien all of a sudden.
Oh, yeah, you got to fix that. Fix that.
Okay,
Good job.
go ahead.
So I think there is this sense of everything is kind of tanking and there's no way to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just getting frustrated and angry, depressed, kind of, I don't know, catatonic at some point because you just get overwhelmed. And so you don't see the positive that's going out there, and the media is not going to help you see it, okay, at all. So it's a little bit difficult
Or
to
they'll give you
counter
their
that,
version of it,
which is never positive. So one of the things that has happened just this week, which is pretty cool, is there was an open letter from some more than 120 retired generals and admirals that came out. This is pretty cool. We want to dive into this because this is something that really hits exactly where we are, all of us right now. I'm actually, Prophet, you read the first because you have the guy voice, and I think it'll sound better in the guy voice.
Open letter from retired generals and admirals. Our nation is in deep peril. We are in the fight for our survival as a constitutional republic like no other time since our founding in 1776. The conflict is between supporters of socialism and Marxism versus supporters of constitutional freedom and liberty.
These are men and women, I don't know the balance or percentage of it, that we're talking about here who understand and face the security of the country. That has been their life's work, right? And they're coming to us saying our nation is in deep peril. And we're in the fight for our survival like no other time since 1776. So at first glance, it feels a little like, how is that positive? How is that positive, Prophet? What do you think?
Well, I think what's positive about it is that someone's identified the problem. That's the positive part of that phrase, of the first paragraph. And they have correctly identified the problem. We are struggling between supporters of socialism and Marxism. We see it in so many aspects of every bit of the news cycle.
Yeah.
Versus supporters of constitutional freedom and liberty. And we see that in, the whole epidemic with the pandemic and the reaction to it. We see that in race relations. We see that in the violation and the constant encroachment on our rights.
Yes.
And we see that, it's particularly the First and Second Amendment seems like they are and like constant onslaught, and they've identified. So I think the out of the positive of that first phrase is you've got individuals who have seen evil, and they have identified evil.
Yes. And that's the first step, right? We have to actually be able to diagnose and to name and to understand what it is we're fighting against. So the idea of just ignoring it or I just don't want to think about it, what we need right now is for it to be clear. We need to all know exactly what it is that we're fighting and warring against. And it is authoritarianism. It is Marxism. It's communism. This is what we're dealing with. This is it. This is the, what's the word I'm looking for? This is the villain.
Yeah.
This is the villain. I should know that. That was good grief. That word is literally my third title in my book.
That's right. It's right. Superhero. And they go into more about the socialism and Marxism, and if you think about like the Declaration of Independence, it's like we're fighting this all over again. It's like we're saying, hey, wait a minute, we have a right to these inalienable, God-given rights. These are not yours to give us. These are the government's job to protect for us.
Not to give us.
Not to give us.
To
No.
protect.
Right.
Just to protect them.
They're inalienable. They are given to us by our Creator. So, anyway, it goes into more depth. And one of the things that jumps out to me, I know that, and this is just a hot button for me, is HR1 and S1. They talk about that in the third paragraph about how the rule of law is being subverted in both of these bills.
No, HR1
House
is
Resolution
House,
1
yes, and S1 is
Senate.
Just so you know.
And so what it is of both chambers, they have to come up with these versions. Eventually they'll have one that, if it passes, that they'll both agree on. And what it is, if you've ever read it, it's horrible, but it pretty much is, it destroys every bit. What it is it's going back and legitimizing the election integrity issues that we saw in the last election. And it's saying, wait a minute, we want more of this. We want to rubber stamp a government seal of approval on these things by just, the mail-in ballots and non-contested and all these other issues that
and it's
problems.
It's like this letter says, quote, election fairness and it would destroy election fairness and allow Democrats to forever remain in power, violating our Constitution and ending our representative republic. Mm-hmm. So that's the very first thing that they mention as far as what it is we need to be looking for and recognizing and fighting against. It's election integrity is what we've got to have. We've got to have election integrity. Right. So that's a big one.
Then where do they go from there?
Well, then they go into talking about the current administration, and they're launched into a full-blown assault on our constitutional rights in a dictatorial manner. So they're talking about the executive orders that were signed, more than 50, instantly bypassing Congress to do that. And then the fact that dealing with population control stuff like the lockdowns, the school closure, business closures, the censorship of written and verbal expression, all of these are direct assaults on our fundamental rights. And so they're dealing with a lot of the basics here. Like, these are the basics. As much as we keep getting bombarded with things, we have to come back to what are the things that are substantial that we must protect. And that's our elections so that we have a voice. And that's our freedom of speech, so we protect our voice and can exercise that.
And then they talk about the border and the integrity of the border. And like we've talked before, I think two of the biggest issues of anyone who's going to run for the national stage is going to be, number one is election integrity, and number two, the border security.
Yeah,
those two are essential. If a candidate is not speaking about those two things every moment they're opening their mouth, I am not interested in that candidate.
Yeah, me either. Me either.
Yeah.
So the point of this is not only have they released this letter, but they are explaining exactly basically who the enemy is and what the enemy's doing, and for us to think about that. Like, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're dealing with a lot of the issues from China to, obviously we talked about the border, to the flawed Iran nuclear deal, stopping the Keystone Pipeline, because that's getting rid of our energy independence. Let's see. There's a couple of more here.
Yeah, we've gone from energy independence for the first time in like 50 years to all of a sudden gas shortages in 4 months.
Yeah, and spiking prices around that, which is, obviously all these things, all the things that we're seeing, all the chaos we're seeing, all the crises that we're seeing, all the things that are stressing us out. And we can't, you can't seem to get your head around everything that's going on because there's just too much. And it's like every day there's something new. Every day there's something more. This is what they're talking about. These are the things. This is everything that we're dealing with is basically downstream from these main topics, these main things. So they also talk about I was just thinking about the Keystone thing. I mean, of all the things to sign an executive order on, to do that on day one, I think it may have been day two. It was one of the first executive orders. I think it may have been day one. Yeah.
To stop the Keystone Pipeline. And so we went from one of the most secure methods of transportation for oil, which would be through a pipeline. And then we're going to go to these countries that don't like us and have it shipped on a cargo ship that, is running on fossil fuels, and then transported by trains that's running on fossil fuels. And in situations where if there was a problem, it's actually worse than the pipeline.
Yeah. And it doesn't really make sense because Joe's own energy secretary even admitted today that, quote, pipe is the best way to go.
Yeah.
So we don't know what they're thinking. And that's another, I think stress for all of us is, who exactly is governing this country?
Yeah.
And what in the world are they thinking?
Yeah. If you don't like pipeline, I'm sorry. There's no other way that fuel is going to get to you. At one time or another, it's going to go through a pipe.
Yeah. And it really is the best method. So anyway, I don't want to spend too much time on the letter, but the point is, so there are different things that they're naming, everything from dealing with the rule of law, which is because we're seeing anarchy in the cities. We're seeing a lot of that being tolerated.
Fundamental.
Yes. And politicizing the military, trying to make, infuse it with political correctness, focus on that. And then lastly, they end it with, and this is, I think, really important, the mental and physical condition of the commander-in-chief cannot be ignored.
Yeah. I saw a news article from Sky News where it just basically said, America, what are you doing? And
we don't know.
Everybody else is noticing it now. It used to be kind of in hushed tones and like, well, but now everyone notices. Yeah. And we're only getting to see sometimes little segments and little things that are in the best possible light. But if you see the actual raw footage, sometimes it's kind of scary.
Yeah, and this is the situation we're in. And we also know that there are, our foreign enemies are watching this. And when America isn't strong, then our allies are at risk, which is what's going on with Israel right now. And we're at risk, and we're dealing with cyber attacks right now. A lot more than I'm hearing about ones that are happening that haven't even been released into the public. So it's a lot bigger issue happening than what we even know.
In the last 4 months, we have been laughed at by Chinese politicians, and we have been goaded along by French politicians saying that we're, like, what are you guys doing? You're going way too far left. It's like, okay, how do you combat that? I don't know how we can top that, But I think the last sentence, the last paragraph is so good. And it really kind of goes into what we're talking about, the positive.
Yes.
And what they said. It's like, we urge all citizens to get involved now at the local, state, and or national level to elect political representatives who will act to save America, our constitutional republic, and to hold those currently in office accountable. The will of the people must be heard and followed.
Amen. Amen.
Mm-hmm.
So the point of this is the positives that we're talking about. They're actually beginning to happen. And this is one of those things that we're seeing. If you pay attention to some of the political shifts and things that are going on, this is new. This is something we're beginning to see across the country in various ways, that you're seeing people get more and more involved, and you're seeing a bit of an uprising, but in a positive, legal way.
Right.
When I say uprising, I don't mean marching in the street. I don't mean destruction. I do not mean violence. I mean uprising as in people are beginning to say, you know what? I have the power to step in and do something. That's what's amazing about this country is, as individuals, we have our freedom, and together, when we come together, we have an immense amount of power. It's the way our entire government sits on, is allowing the empowerment of the individual.
Right.
And we're starting to, I think they don't want us to remember that, I should say. Those in power do not want us to remember we're actually the ones that hold all the power.
Yeah, there's you don't want to wake the sleeping giant, I think, and the sleeping giant is us. And despite what the former vice president says, we the people was not talking about the government. We the people is us.
It's just scary that even came out of his mouth.
To me, that was the scariest thing I heard that night.
Yeah.
Was we the people is the government. It's not. And it's just, I cannot believe that, I'm not even blaming him, because I don't know that he knows exactly, but some speechwriter put that thing on paper, and then other advisors looked at it and they're like, yep, let's go with it. It's just scary beyond belief that they said that. But anyway, I think what they were saying is so perfect, because I think it echoes
the generals, you mean?
The generals, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That the answer to all this is that we, the people, you, the people, get involved. Mm-hmm. You stand up, and you're responsible for your own freedoms. You are.
Yes,
you are
true.
responsible for safeguarding it. Because if the politician is ever allowed to sway from that and to disregard your freedoms, it's your responsibility to hold them accountable or remove them. Mm-hmm. And then someone else has to stand up. And it should be a sacrifice. It should not necessarily be what we have today, where it's a reward system, where everybody that goes into the system, they go in, moderately poor or moderately wealthy, and then they come out extremely
middle class,
wealthy.
And they come out millionaires.
Yeah, that should not be the way it is.
I honestly have always felt like serving in Congress needed to maybe cost you something. Honestly, it needed to be something that you didn't get anything out of it. That way you wouldn't want to do it for very long. You're not going to get anything out of it.
Was it John Hancock that said that, we had just signed all of our death warrants, and so many of them lost. I mean, they knew that they could
either, when he signed the Declaration of Independence.
So many of them knew that they could lose everything, and even their lives. And some of them did.
Who is it that said when he signed, he said, my pen shakes, but my will does not, or my heart does not.
Right. And I can't remember.
Something, or my determination, something like that. But he says my pen may shake, but my determination does not. Something, because they knew exactly what they were doing. They knew that they were bringing upon the weight of the most powerful military, the most powerful force at that point onto their heads, and they had no way to really combat it. And so that's really where we are. Not to that degree necessarily, because we have those founding documents. We can do this, and we can push back, and every single thing that we do, we can do it in because we have basically our ruling documents behind us. I don't know how else to say that.
Yeah.
We actually are the ones that's backing us. They are the ones, when we're looking at the DC establishment elite, they are the ones that are superseding what their powers are. They are going beyond legally what they should be doing.
Yeah.
We don't have to do that.
The answer is, and it is a good answer. And the answer is, we go back and we take it back.
Yeah. Take it back.
And when I say it, I mean, I'm not talking about storming the Capitol. I'm talking about going in, taking your liberties back that are outlined in these documents.
And are very possible
Mm-hmm.
for all of us.
Yeah.
Very possible. So about getting involved in local, state,
Mm-hmm.
national elections, getting involved. One of the things I think is, and I know this is hard, those of us, okay, so those of people like Prophet and I who are a little bit crazy, and we are always involved in politics, and we always, oh yeah, you're totally crazy. And I mean, he's got a fake mustache in here for some reason. I don't even know.
Just
it's
a
sitting
minute. I'll
there.
be right back.
I don't know. So those of us who are super involved in politics and stay, up to date.
Hey, how's it going? You doing okay? Oh, it's coming off. Okay.
Why is there always an accent attached to you?
I don't know. It changes me. It changes me. And it also tickles my nose. It's like, why would you want to put a mask over this? This is pure loveliness. All right, I'll take it off.
Okay, you're completely distracting me. What was
Sorry.
my thought? No, that's all right. That's all right.
One of the things like school boards, which is we saw that beautiful display, which unfortunately didn't last, but it was important nonetheless. So in Vail, Arizona, where
That was fun.
Oh, it was beautiful.
If you didn't catch, if you didn't catch it, get online and watch the video. It was pretty fun.
It was amazing. The school board didn't want to meet in person. They didn't want to meet without masks. They all had their mask on. These parents showed up and they had enough. And so they showed up and it freaked out the board. The board's like, no. And they're like all wetting themselves and they got, and they run out and this is unsafe. This is unsafe.
It's their meeting and they left.
So someone said, excuse me, I think I swallowed the mustache hair. So they ended up saying, hey, Robert's Rules of Order, let's just disband this board. And they voted them out and seconded it and voted on it. And then
the first rule of business was?
Yeah. Then they elected 5 new
right.
board members, and then they
ended the mask mandate.
Ended the mask mandate.
Very first thing they did.
Beautiful.
It didn't stick. Okay. Yeah. So because there was some rules, like I think it has to be the head of the board has to actually attend during something like this. Anyway, so it didn't stick, but it was still pretty cool.
But the message is the next time that board meets is, okay, we've got some people that are angry.
Yeah.
And they are, if we don't do kind of what they're wanting, they're going to freak out.
Yeah. And I don't see those parents going away anytime soon.
I imagine you're going to see some of their names actually as school board members.
I would love to see that. And I think it's really cool. So, that idea of getting involved at the root level is mm-hmm. really where we start to push back and take our country back. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty interesting. We're seeing that in school boards, which I love the fact that it's happening in school boards right now because the parents are stepping in and saying, enough of this, enough. Yeah. I'm not going to allow you to indoctrinate my child or mask my child or silence my child. It's just not going to happen. And so there are parents that are showing up at school board meetings in Utah and Oklahoma and Kansas. It's happened. And they're letting them know, mm-hmm. look, we're going to get you guys out of here. You're going to do what we tell you. This is the way we want our children taken care of. Some of them are actually suing schools. And then, of course, you have Arizona, Virginia. They actually launched a PAC, and they took the board over the reopening and dealing with things like the way they, shut down, the fact they wouldn't reopen, issues, critical race theories that they're they're teaching, and then trying to silence students and teachers and themselves with free speech issues, censorship. And so they've created a PAC in order to campaign and to get the school board out of there, to get new candidates. And in a Dallas suburb in Southlake, I thought that was very, very cool. They they were like a storm, a storm. And they came in and completely gutted their school board, got rid of them and reelected new people with landslides of 70%. And it was very cool. They did, they did some seriously cool stuff. They had They had a PAC. They set up action committees. They had other subcommittees where people like the grandparents and the dad and maybe the soccer mom, the mom would come in and they would actually interview the candidates, and they had to go before this board. And they would grill them, what about this? What about that? And they would, before they would ever give them their endorsement.
If anything good came
cool
out
stuff.
of the 2020 craziness about schools and all the homeschooling that took place, if anything positive came out, I think a lot of parents got really involved in their kids' education, and they started. I mean, because I saw so many things where they're like, "Wait a minute, this is not what I thought this was.
Right.
Where did this come from?" And they were reading stuff that they
what kind of nonsense is this?
Yeah, some of the stuff was being taught without their knowledge because they weren't getting involved in it. And all of a sudden they were. And then you start seeing it's like, hey, we want the school open back up, and you're going to teach them, and you're going to teach them the right way.
Kids and communities and this country are always better off when parents are involved in their child's education. We're always better. All of us are better off for it.
Every school teacher will actually tell you that too. If a parent is involved in the education, that child thrives.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you see a lot of you see a lot of minorities, particularly that come from Asia, that come here with the families, and in India too. Is like, but the families are real involved in that child's education. And all of a sudden, if you notice, they do exceptionally well, and sometimes in very strict poverty situations. They're living in multi-generational, in cramped housing and things like that. It doesn't matter. They are just many times are just doing very well at school because they're focused so heavily. The family is involved. They know that's the ticket
group.
out.
Yeah,
they know that's the ticket out.
Yeah, the family has formed a support group, and so. I don't know. It's just really cool. It's been really cool to see these parents stepping up. And so that's a great example of what it means for us to step in and start taking our country back and getting involved wherever it is that we can get involved. It doesn't mean that you have to run for office. Maybe you're the person who gets on and you do a phone bank.
Yeah.
Maybe you're the person who says, you know what, I'm really good at organizing and I love to do barbecues and meet and greets and things like that.
Right.
I'm going to volunteer to start doing that for candidates that are conservative. They're going to, and so I'm going to do that. I'm going to get the community involved, and I'm going to do that. There's all kinds of ways that we can step in.
And if you don't have that opportunity there, you're like, well, we don't really have that in our community. There you go. That's your opportunity.
Perfect.
Be that person.
Yeah. If it doesn't exist, then
create it. Yeah.
Wouldn't that be great?
We've got this really cool thing now that's called the internet. And so you can go online and see what other communities are doing. And so if it's not happening in your community, get out there and make it happen. Right now is the time to act. There are enough patriots that are rising up right now because they're just so tired of some of the stuff that's been going on. And so this is the perfect time to get out there, organize, find out who you're fighting, and organize and figure out your path forward. And
the point here too is to know that you're not alone. Okay. You're not alone. You're not saying, well, if I go do this, I'm just one person. I don't know what to do. I don't think how am I going to make that big of a difference? That's what's going on. And across the U.S. and various places, there are people who are coming together for a particular thing. Right. Maybe they're coming together to sign a petition to recall their governor in California. Maybe they're coming together to censor their GOP leader, who is just an establishment person who is now removed from leadership. I'm talking about Liz Cheney. Maybe they're coming together and pushing for audits and things like that for election integrity. So this is all things that are happening right now in the country that stems from individuals like you and me. We don't have a name, we don't have money, we don't have power, and we're just coming together in groups, organizing and moving forward.
I guarantee you that the removal of Liz Cheney happened because a lot of people in constituencies contacted their representative.
Yes, I was one of them.
Yeah, so that happened enough times, and like they say, it's you. If you hear from 5 or 10, that means there are 100 out there, and so
it doesn't take that many.
Right.
It really doesn't take that many. I've actually had a GOP leader of a county say, it really, if we can just get 5 5-ish, 8 people maybe to call an office when we're trying to stop something, that starts to put the brakes on. 5 to 8 people. I told her I had no idea. It was so small. I was thinking they needed hundreds. And she said, no, you'd be surprised, because they know for every person who does call, there are thousands who did not.
Right.
She said, so they just need to hear. They need to hear from us. So that's something that we can do, any of us can do. Pick up a phone and say, hey, I don't like Liz Cheney. I want her out of leadership.
Right.
Thanks.
In the words of Benjamin Franklin, it's a republic if you can keep it. When he said that phrase, if you can keep it, who do you think he was talking about trying to take the republic away? It was this type of thing that we're fighting right now. And just what these generals outlined. May have not necessarily during the time of Franklin been socialist and Marxist, because it didn't exist at that time, but he understood that there's a constant onslaught on our freedoms.
Yes, of those who want control. Authoritarians have always been.
Yeah.
So
they just
whatever
change
you
their
want to call
name
them.
from each generation.
Yeah, whatever you want to call them. So that to me is very positive. That the stuff that's going on.
It is. Yeah.
Very positive.
Because people are getting fed up, and they're standing up, and they're doing something about it. These generals just outlined it in a beautiful way. But again, these generals are used to fighting evil.
Yeah.
They know what it is.
And they know how to recognize it.
Mm-hmm. So I want to encourage everyone, you can just say, I'm just one person. Well, about 2 million people in California just said, I'm just one person, and they signed their name to a document.
And now the governor is likely gone.
Yeah, I don't see a chance for him making it.
Right.
Who knows what you'll get?
We'll see.
We'll see. Hopefully something good happens there. But something will happen there because the people have spoken.
Yes. And that's a powerful force. One of the things too, and I do this every once in a while, when I start to feel just very lonely about being, like as if just feeling powerless and all, feeling like there's nothing that we can do. There's nothing. I
never feel that way, so I don't know what you're talking about.
You wouldn't understand. You wouldn't understand. Sometimes I have to have help opening a salsa jar. Okay, this is the life. And I will actually. I know that people are going to be like, she's insane, but I will get on and I'll watch those videos of Trump rallies or especially of just the the Trump parades and things like that, just to remind myself of how many of us there are. And I love it, seeing all those boats out in the water and those cars lined up and people excited. Here's the thing, guys. Those people are still there. That's who we are, and we haven't changed. Right. And we're not alone.
Yeah.
And we know there's more of us than this, but we definitely know there's 75 million of us. So together we can make a difference. And I think it's extremely important that we never lose sight of that. We don't just say, well, what do we do? It's just too big. It's just too outnumbering. It's just overwhelming us. And I had this scripture that I want to share, and Prophet's got one too. It's really, really good. But I want to share this one that kind of dealt with that. And this was one that just kind of struck me this week, and I've been kind of meditating on it. And it's Psalms 147, verse 10 through 11. And it says, this is a King James version because I just thought it was the "if" was kind of fun on it. But it says, he, talking about the Lord, he delighteth not in the strength of the horse. He taketh not pleasure in the legs of a man. The Lord taketh pleasure in them that fear him, and those that hope in his mercy. Now, here's the part that I really like, okay? So, well, I like all of it, but he's saying he does not take delight in the strength of a horse, okay? The power, right? The strength, the force of that, or the pleasure of the legs of a man. In other words, the strength or the power of a man. This does not impress God. He doesn't care. The Lord taketh pleasure in them that fear him, and those that hope in his mercy. And I wanted to really understand what he meant by that. And so I looked up the Hebrew words for hope and mercy. And I'm not going to try to pronounce them because they require a spit thing. And every time I do them, Prophet goes over and he starts hacking up. And I just don't think you want that.
Let me get ready. Hang on a second.
Yeah, it's all right. So the phrase, "in those that hope," is a word that means to wait, hope, and expect. And the phrase "in his mercy" means goodness. The mercy It means his goodness, his kindness, and his faithfulness. So what the verse is saying is he's not impressed with horses and men, but he takes great pleasure in those that fear him and those that wait, hope, and expect in his goodness, kindness, and faithfulness. No matter what we're up against right now, God has not changed, and none of this intimidates him.
Right.
None of it.
That's good. And as far as the King James, I should say, I thinketh it's goodeth. I like it. So I'm going to read my verse out of a hippie version, the Message.
Because he's a heathen.
Yeah. But I'm trying to think if I should do an accent, but I probably won't. Let's just go ahead and keep God's word holy here as much as we can. So let's not allow ourselves. Oh, I'm sorry. This is Galatians 6:9-10 out of the Message. So let's not allow ourselves to get fatigued doing good. At the right time, we will harvest a good crop if we don't give up or quit. Right now, therefore, every time we get the chance, let us work for the benefit of all, starting with the people closest to us in the community of faith. That's like exactly what we're talking about.
It really is exactly what we're talking about. Yeah.
So don't get fatigued. Don't grow weary in well-doing is what the King James says. But don't get fatigued. Be encouraged.
Because you have a strength in God. You have someone, you have a creator and a loving Father who is with you, who's with all of us. And we need to remember that. He is delighted and excited. And when we hope in his goodness and we're expecting it.
Expect. Yeah, that's what I say. That I love that part of your verse. It's just expect. That's what pops to me is expect.
Right. That we're expecting his goodness.
And I think one of the things I've always used as an analogy in my life is with farming. It's like, I feel like God tells me, I want you to sow. And so I go in the direction that I feel like he wants me to go. And I sow and I sow and I sow. And then God, and then God comes over here and he creates a harvest. But the harvest is sometimes in a spot where I did not sow. But I think God is doing, what he's saying is, I wanted you to be diligent. I wanted you to be faithful. I wanted you to work and do what I told you to do. But I'm going to bless your efforts, but I'm blessing them over here so that you can't take credit for the harvest. It was not your works, Randy. I'm blessing your works, but it was not your works.
Due to them. Yes.
Right. And so, that's the way it's worked in my life so many times. And it's just been fascinating to me that God does it that way. But I think that's what this is saying is like, get out there and do something. Don't grow weary in it, and don't worry about the results. Okay. That's not what you're responsible for. You're responsible to do your work.
That's exactly right. As a matter of fact, a very dear friend of mine who's been a mentor to me for years and years and years. And he said that to me one time. It just completely rearranged the way I've thought about how I approach anything in life. And I sat down, we would have these lunches, and I sat down, and the first thing he says is, what would you do? What would you do if you didn't have to worry about the result? If all you had to do is be faithful to work, but the result wasn't your responsibility, what would you do with your life? And I thought, okay, whoa, I hadn't even let me rewire my brain for a second because I'm always thinking about results.
Right.
And I stopped and I thought, I told him, I said, well, what wouldn't I do? What wouldn't I do? Whatever is in front of me, whatever is placed in front of me, I just do it. Right. And his point that he was explaining to me is he said, God is the author of the results. That's his responsibility. That's on him. He's the result guy. We're just here to be faithful. So what we do is we come before God, we pray, we ask him ways and things that we can do, and then we're just obedient to do whatever is placed in front of us. That's it. And what he decides to do with that, that's his realm. That's his realm. He might bless what we're doing, and he might do something completely different to it, and he might blow it up, absolutely blow it up. And something happened we had no idea would come out of what little that we did. All he's asking for us is to do is to be faithful and do the little.
Mm-hmm. So run for those positions. Find out. I mean, pray about it first of all. You may say, "Well, I don't know how to pray." There are a lot of people that can help you do that, but it starts with just saying, "Hey, God, what do you want me to do?" And I always say the most artful prayer in the Bible was Peter when he was drowning, when he just said, "Help." I've had a lot of prayers that started out that way, but just say, "God, I just don't know what you want me to do. Point me in the direction I need to go.
Yeah.
Give me a sign. Give me something. Go out there and do it." And again, don't worry about the results. Just be faithful. Listen and do what you're told, and be faithful. And don't worry about the results.
Yeah.
Because what might happen is you might win, or you might inspire others, or you might be able to help bring about a change, some policy, some attention to much needed things that are crucial for your environment, whatever it is.
Right. We have no idea the things that we do and how they're going to impact our world. But the biggest thing that we cannot do is to
do nothing.
To do nothing, to get depressed, to get despondent, to just feel powerless, and then to just sit here and let this happen. We can fight this, and God is going to be with us. Mm-hmm. All we have to do is be willing to just do whatever is in front of us and whatever that we can. That's it.
So you're not alone.
Yep. Nope.
And God's on your side. And go do something. Okay? So that's what we need you to do. Just go out there and do it.
Yeah, just do it.
And let us know what you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay?
And in the meantime,
question everything.
Everything.